How getting to know yourself better is going to make your long-term relationships kick ass. I'm Duke DeLate. I'm a dating coach here at Intimacy Liberation Army, and I'm going through a whole bunch of stuff on self-awareness this month and knowing yourself so that you can have healthy, fun, exciting dating interactions. Let's jump into it. Number one, knowing yourself. And if you haven't figured all this knowing yourself stuff out, like there's 15 days of it. I've been doing all sorts of little topics on this self-awareness, knowing yourself things. I'll just look back in the channel. It's part of a playlist. Anyway, number one, it enhances your communication. When you're super self-aware, when you understand what your thoughts, your feelings, your values, your standards are, you can communicate clearly. Sometimes you won't, the person won't like what you're saying, but they can't argue with that's who you are and that's your standards and your boundaries. Very often the issues with communication are people think that you think like them. And so they get really surprised when you don't react in the way that they would react. They get really surprised when you were a little shifty or haphazard with the way that you explained yourself, and then they are surprised to see that your viewpoints aren't what they expected. And whether or not they have nefarious goals or not, it still mitigates most of the communication problems when you can just be fucking clear with what you have to say. And like, you don't have to be a good speaker or necessarily a good communicator, so to speak, but you can be, if they can trust you to be honest with what was coming from the inside, and this is why I believe the way I do, then they're much less likely to try to change your mind and get you to go along with their program and use tactics like manipulation and any of the abuse stuff to get you to move your needle. Because eventually, if you're hard to sway because you've thought through your stuff and you're self-aware and you have real reasons behind what you're doing, then it's going to be easier to try to manipulate somebody else than to manipulate you. So knowing yourself and knowing why you stand for what you stand for, knowing what your values are, what priority those are in, what takes precedence over the other, just allows you to communicate more clearly, and it enhances the way that you communicate, and lets the people who agree with what you have to say stay in your life, and the people who don't agree, they just exit stage left, and I'm okay with that. Two, it builds trust and accountability. For sure, being more clear more frequently creates trust and rapport with the person that you're talking to, whether it's somebody you just met and you're going on a first date or something, or it's somebody you've been dating for years and years and years and years. If you have been consistently able to express your values and your systems and your beliefs and your emotions, and they can kind of count on that, it builds trust. And when you have clearly well thought out understandings of who you are, you've brought your subconscious to the surface, you've sort of explored it, you figure out what your triggers are, you figure out what pisses you off emotionally and how to avoid those things, you can actually communicate clearly, more consistently, and then other people will trust you to maintain consistency, right? Like the trust is there. And whether or not they agree with you on a content level, still they can't argue with the fact that you know what the fuck you want and where you're going and who you are. And that creates a lot of trust. And then on the other side, it also creates accountability, because when you find yourself rooted in an understanding of self, doesn't mean you're always going to act right, but you can clearly see when your triggers go off and then you start behaving in ways that your higher self would not want to act. You can check yourself and give yourself a personal accountability there. And when people see that you're consistent, they will also hold you accountable to the things that you were consistent about before. So that helps. And so yeah, trust and accountability in the relationship. Also part of the enhancement of communication. And third, it reduces your unnecessary conflict. We're always going to have conflict. We're going to have issues. We're going to have misunderstandings, miscommunications, people not seeing eye to eye. But there is a bunch of conflict based on vagueness and misunderstanding and trying to mask part of your emotions when you're communicating and hide one thing from another person. If you don't want them to know that you're feeling a certain way. If you are very self-aware of how you feel and you can communicate it clearly, then you can stop a lot of the misunderstanding style conflict. Now, in the self-awareness helps on the next level too. Like if you know yourself and you want to mask something and you want to hold something back and you want to not put all your cards on the table, you can, and you're not going to be leaking out little parts of your humanity because you're vague on what you're trying to hold back and what you're trying to give in. A lot of the dance from toxic relationships is you think you have strength and control, and then you lose a little bit of it, and they take advantage of it. They pounce on that weakness, and they call you out on it, and then there's all this cool little dance of manipulation that goes on in those types of relationships, and that dance happens because you're not clear with yourself about who you are and where your boundaries lie. There are, at this point in my dating life, I'm probably not going to cross my own boundaries for virtually anybody. There's no promise that's greater than my own self-respect. Now, when I first started in there, I was trying a bunch of suits on, a bunch of social masks on, and I didn't really know what I didn't know. And I think that exploration time was a good time, right? Like I learned a lot. But now that I've sort of developed my own self-awareness and my own knowledge of what I act and interact with, then I'm not going to fall into the trap of somebody, being able to fix all of my issues that I didn't clearly define, and then fall for their manipulation. And so it reduces the unnecessary conflict. You don't have to put up with bullshit you don't want to put up with anymore because you know yourself and you know what you're willing to put up with. You know what you're willing to stand for. 4, it strengthens your emotional intimacy. Obviously, this goes along with trust. It goes along with rapport and accountability. If you are able to share vulnerable sides of yourself without, we used to call it putting your dick out on the table, right? If you can just be vulnerable, express your intention, and then they can smash it if they want, or they can accept it, right? It's a little vulgar, but my whole life was vulgar. So your ability to be vulnerable and then have there's a strength in able to just sort of be vulnerable without playing victim. You could just be like, all right, here it is. Here's what I think. Here's why, and here's what I'm feeling, and here's why, and here's what I'm feeling, and I'm okay with it, and I hope you can be too. And those types of communications that are super vulnerable actually create trust, rapport, and intimacy, because it gives them a space that they can also be vulnerable in. Because you're not going to judge yourself for, something that, by vulnerable I mean like you're putting yourself in a position where somebody can take advantage of you, knowingly. But when you feel like you understand all of the ways that somebody can take advantage of you, and you've kind of dealt with those things and had those things off in the past, you can be vulnerable and without fear, because even if somebody is going to be malicious, you've already kind of seen that coming, and you can be like, oh, well, now I know who you are, rather than, oh my God, I expect you to be nice to me, and then you were so mean to me, then you get all, because your expectations were wrong. But if you be like, you know what, it's acceptable if this person does something outside of, does something to hurt me, or something malicious, or something that completely goes against my standards. It's okay if they do that, because then I know who they are, I know where to slot them in, and then I don't have to worry about dealing with them anymore. So your ability to be vulnerable is indicative of your trust that you have, that you're going to be okay after the fact. whether or not the other person, takes advantage of you or does something mean. And sometimes people will do something mean. You're like, oh, okay, that hurt. Right? And then they can apologize or they can not, and then you can cut them out of your life, or you can, limit contact or whatever you need to do. But the payoff for being vulnerable and trusting that whatever happens, you'll be okay, and because you know who you are and you can just kind of put it out in the world, is that people who appreciate that will feel like they can also be vulnerable in a relationship, and you can deepen intimacy really, really, really fast. So that's number 4. Number 5, it encourages personal growth and mutual growth with your partner for a long-term relationship. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and then you know who you are and where you're going, and you communicate that on a regular basis, and you're consistent as fuck, they are also going to be invited to be vulnerable, consistent as fuck, deal with hard shit with you, and communicate their way through it. It starts to become something where you continue to grow, you continue to take a hold of your triggers, you become somebody who is internally self-regulated, who's very resilient, and they also feel safe to explore those things too, and they also become more resilient and handle their triggers and stop lashing out in toxic and ways that don't serve them anymore, and are able to grow in their own thing. And then your relationship together can grow with the combination of both of your emotional growth combined. And so this particular content, I was looking at the YouTube stats, and nobody makes it past minute 2 anyway. So I'm not worried that you're seeing this part of the video and hearing me self-reflect on how I need to change my content up. If you are seeing this, feel free to hit like and put a comment down there. But as the stats go, nobody stays past the first 2 minutes. And I think it's because I just keep rambling about shit that doesn't matter to the viewer, which is fine. YouTube hasn't found my audience yet. I know that the things that I say are useful to my clients, and so as long as we make those things match, we're going to be fine. But I think I need to. I think I need to go more off the cuff. Like yesterday's video was just like straight off the top of my head. I didn't have notes. And most of my videos and most of my public speeches are straight off the top of my head with like a really rough outline. So I think there's like 5 ways the self-awareness can help your long-term relationships. I mean, yeah, the explanation was fine, but like, what problem are you solving? Like, most of my clients don't have long-term relationships, so I don't know why I'm talking about that shit. Something to think about. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we are talking about something new off the top of my head. It was going to be how to increase your self-awareness with meditation, but I already covered that. This is just a deeper, like, how to meditate. But I already covered that in the 10 daily practices video. So I might just go off the rails tomorrow, and like I said, most people aren't making it past the first 2 minutes anyway, so it doesn't really matter what I talk about. And I will, I think I'll come up with something more from my soul than rather from this piece of paper over here, because I think even I was bored with today's topic. Anyways, if you like the shit, comment, like, subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified when I release a new video, which is going to be about 24 hours from now. I will see you guys tomorrow, and thank you for watching. Until then, stay awesome.